It'll only go live.
Right, okay, cool. Um, Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Israel tour update with our executive director, Joel. Joel is going to speak you through a short presentation that he has prepared, and then at the end, we will go through some questions that you can ask in the chat. Just a reminder, you have to be a subscriber of FZY's YouTube channel to ask any questions in the chat. If you're wondering why I won't let you ask questions. And oh yeah, and just to introduce myself, if you don't know, I'm Josh. I am a movement worker at FZY this year, and I am working on Israel tour this summer. Not over to you, Joel.
Okay, thank you, Josh. So yeah, for those of you that weren't on the first parent evening that we did online, my name is Joel. I'm the executive director of FZY. I grew up and lived in the UK for 7 years, and for the last nearly 16 years, I've been living in Israel. For the last almost 21 years now, I've been working for either FZY or one of our sister youth movement in America, Young Judea. And for the last 9 years or so, I've been FZY's executive director. What we're going to do, I'm just going to start showing my screen. But what we're going to do this evening is we're going to try and keep things short. We're not going to try and go over too much of the old grounds. Like the presentation is that we went through in more detail about how the Israel tour program works, how we'll be working according to safety and security and everything like that is all available on our YouTube channel. So if there are things that you would like to know in more detail about insurance, about cancellation, about safety and security, then I do advise like you go and check that out on FZY's YouTube channel. What we want to do this evening is to kind of like give you an update. It was more than 5 weeks ago, nearly 6 weeks ago, since we had the last um, conversation, last Israel update, Israel tour update, just before launch. And we recognize and we know that the last day for cancelling with whilst receiving a full refund is coming up. And so we felt it was important for us to be transparent and to share with you where things are at and how things have changed. So we'll have a short update on signups and the response for our launch. I would very, very briefly and quickly take you through some of the safety and security precautions that we are taking. I'll then have a short update on what has changed in the last 5-6 weeks since we spoke in Israel. Upcoming deadlines, and then we'll have an opportunity for question and answers. I know some people sent in some questions over the last week or so, and we'll incorporate, hopefully some of those will be incorporated within the presentation itself, and others we will touch on at the end. So with regards to Israel Tour launch, so far across the community, approximately 600 people have signed up to Israel Tour. That is around 50% of the numbers from last year, which is something which was expected. Obviously, this year we weren't expecting 100% of people that we would have had last year, but approximately 600 people have signed up, and that's made up. At the moment, there are currently 17 buses going out to Israel Tour across 7 different youth movements. FZY has been for the last 3 decades and still is this year the largest of those Israel Tour providers. We're taking approximately 50% of those people who have signed up with FZY. Currently we have over 250 people who are signed up to our program. We have almost 7 full tours. It depends on how many people we put on a bus, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But we have around close to 7 full tours of groups signed up. And I know that several people have been asking and about other options that we're providing, and will we be providing other options and everything like that. We're going to touch on that. I'll touch on that again at the end, but just so people are aware, Israel Tour is by far and away more popular at the moment than any other option which is out there. Approximately double the amount of people have signed up to an Israel Tour program this summer than they have to any other alternative options which should be provided by some other youth organizations. So it's a ratio of around 2 to 1 of the people that are signing up for this summer for people for year 11 are signing up to an Israel tour option rather than a Europe option or something differently. FZY are only running and are only operating Israel tour this summer. But again, I'll touch on that a little bit at the end. So that's where things are at the moment. So overall, there's a large number of people have been signing up. There's 17 buses expected this summer across the community, of which FZY will be taking about 50% of those people coming. These are slides that we looked at in the last presentation. So I am just going to I'm not going to go through them in depth. I'm just going to touch on a few things just so that those that potentially may have missed will understand the precautions that we're taking. But if you want to understand this in more depth, then please do look back at the last presentation. Like, we're making all of our decisions through the Cheder Matzav and the Moked Teva, which is the situation room. And that's the situation room which is connected to the army, connected to the police force, gets daily updates from all of the different bases around the country. And then they provide information to FZY and to other organizations, other educational groups which are out in Israel, which is not available to the general public. And we base our itineraries according to their guidelines. If they say there are places that we can't go to, we don't go to that. We don't go to those places. Whatever restrictions that they set down, we adhere to those and we follow those. And we don't just send our itineraries to them in advance. We also check in with them every day and make sure that what it is that we had planned to do is something that is still safe for us to do. And we will make any changes at any moment. At any given time, we'll make any changes if the Cheder Matzav tell us to do that. And again, to touch through some of the other safety and security protocols that we're putting in place, each tour group will have 4 staff, 2 Israeli, 2 British staff who are with them. There are also going to be 2 coordinators who are a little bit older, more experienced, who are assigned to each group as well. There's a security guard who will be traveling with the group. We are training our staff more thoroughly in safety and security procedures this year, understanding what to do, like if a siren was to go off, where shelters are. We will be briefing all the participants, before they get to Israel and as soon as they land in Israel and at various points throughout, to make sure that they understand what is expected of them, to make sure that we can run a safe program. And as I said, all of our programs are organized through the Cheder Matzav. We will also, there are certain places that we're saying that we will not be going to. We will not be going to the West Bank. We will not be going to East Jerusalem. We will not be going to anywhere which isn't a green zone, which we'll look at the next slide. So anywhere which the Cheder Matzav says we shouldn't be going, we will not be going there. Plus the West Bank, plus East Jerusalem. So we are taking steps, we're taking precautions to make sure that where the participants, where Israel Tour will go and to visit, will be in areas which are deemed safe by the security services in Israel. We looked at these maps in the last information evening. These are the updated maps. You'll actually notice there's if you remember, there actually has been no change whatsoever to either of the maps. These are the maps on the right hand side is the Cheder Matzav map. The map on the left hand side is the one from the Home Front Command, and you can see that almost the entirety of the country on both of these maps are green, which suggests that they are places which are safe to visit. The only change that there has been since since we last met in like at the beginning of February is there's now the Home Front Commands have said that where previously they said in green areas you could only have gatherings of up to 15,000 people. Now they're now saying that you can have gatherings, unlimited number of people in any of the green areas, apart from 2 places called Ashkelon and Netivot, which are just, if you can see my cursor, just in this green area right next to the yellow area, which we won't be visiting at all, and we won't even be visiting these couple of areas here either, where you can have 15,000 people. That's been the only change in the last 5.5 weeks since we last met, and you can see that for both the Home Front Command and the Cheder Matzav are deeming the vast majority of the country outside of a strip on the northern border and outside of a strip around the Gaza border as safe places to visit. This is also updated from when we last had a conversation. We last met. You'll see probably these last three bars are new because it's been around 6 weeks since we last spoke, and these are in two weekly, bi-weekly. Each bar represents a fortnight. So you can see that, like, in terms of these kind of like refer to the sirens or rockets that may be coming into Israel, and you can see that over the last few weeks things haven't changed. It's been very stable really since the turn of the new year. You can see in terms of the number of rockets that are coming over into Israel, things have stabilized. They're not jumping up. They were at I would like to say a low level, but unfortunately in Israel there has always been for approaching around 2 decades now, there have been unfortunately rockets coming in, often from Gaza, sometimes from the northern border, on an almost weekly basis, and unfortunately that is still happening today. But what we saw at the start on October 7th and those few weeks, a month or two after, we can see that the numbers now have stabilized and are at a much lower rate, and certainly haven't changed in those, hasn't really risen or in any way since we had those conversations about 6 weeks ago. What I do want to say is that since we last met, everything which is written here, all of the different places which are written here on this slide, is since we last had a conversation 5.5, 6 weeks ago, there hasn't been a single siren in any of these areas, which includes Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Jaffa, places in the center of the country where we spend, at least a week, if not longer, of our programs. So going, places, in Jerusalem, we visit the Kotel, the Old City, Yad Vashem, Har Herzl, Machane Yehuda. All of these places, there's been nothing since. There's new zero sirens since we last met. And if we remember back when we last met and I presented, most of these places had only had maybe one siren, possibly two sirens in the 3 months previously as well. So not only have these places not had any sirens in the last 5.5, 6 weeks since we last met, on the whole, these places have not had sirens now and have not had any rockets going towards them for around 3 months, sometimes even nearer 4 months. So you can see in the sense I've highlighted Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Jaffa, and some other areas in the south, places like Masada, the Dead Sea, Sde Boker, where we visit David Ben-Gurion, the first Israeli prime minister's home and grave, and understand about him, Mitzpeh Ramon, Beersheba, and lots of the other experiences we have in the south, like the Bedouin hospitality, desert hikes, sand surfing, loads of different activities there. In all of these areas, as I said, there have not been any sirens, any rockets for since we last met, and generally speaking, not for several months. And also in the north as well, many places within the north. We saw that in the map in the last slide. We saw on the very top of the northern border, bordering Lebanon and Syria, they are no-go areas. And actually, if we look at almost the entirety of the rockets which have been coming over in the last month, probably closer to 2 months now, almost all of them have come to that strip right at the top. But the places in the north where we visit, where we're often visiting on tour, like Tiberias, the Lake Kinneret, Haifa, Akko, having a Druze hospitality, a lot of the water hikes that we go to there. We do a lot of stuff on the Kinneret, whether that's water sports and different things like that. None of these places, as we said again, have had sirens or rockets over the last 6 weeks, and for most of these, it's much longer than that. But we wanted to highlight, an update of what's happened since we last spoke. So we can see that in terms of like what is a regular general schedule for Israel tour program. These are areas where there haven't been rockets, there haven't been sirens, that things are in a normal state, and I know it's maybe very difficult to internalize that. Being in the UK, I mean, I've just come back from the UK last night. I was there for a few days for work, and I know, speaking to a lot of people in the UK, there's this perception that Israel, like, there's rockets flying everywhere and we're in the middle of a war zone. Unfortunately, Israel is at war, but inside Israel and where we are, the majority of the country, as you can see from this slide, is not necessarily experiencing that really at all. And only in a couple of areas which are off limits for us throughout the summer is where that is being highlighted. So that's kind of like an update of the situation where things have been over the last 6 weeks or so. So I want to also just share also some upcoming deadlines which are coming. I'm sure most of you are aware. Um, in terms of cancellation to be receive a full refund, the deadline for that is you would have to make a cancellation before the 18th of March, which is coming up in about 3-4 days time from now. So that's a deadline coming up. Also on the 18th of March, there is the deadline for completing the second application form. Well, that's the application form, which includes the GP form, that includes asks for a lot more information um, from you about the applicant, about the person who's coming on the program. It's an important deadline. It's an important deadline because of the deadlines that we have in FZY with Allow coming up. Like we have deadlines with Allow in like within a couple of weeks of that March 18th deadline, where we have to be able to assign each participant to a specific flight. In order to do that, we need to be able to split tour groups. In order to be able to have split tour groups, we need to have information which is on application form 2. We ask for friendship requests. There are also other information which helps us build, groups which are well balanced and will work for the summer. So it is important that March 18th deadline, which is in a few days' time, for the application form to be completed. If like everything is done, but it's the GP which is maybe holding up that process, and you can't get the GP form submitted by that time, we ask you to submit the rest of the forms, and the GP form can come in slightly later. But it's really important that deadline is met so we can then move on with the process on our side. And the deadline for the balance of payment is May the 1st, and at some point, in April, as we're coming closer to that deadline, one of the FZY's admin team will reach out and will invoice you for that. I know that there were some questions which came in, wanted to clarify what is our cancellation policy after once we've hit the 18th of March. So our full cancellation policy is there on our website. We've put it in a separate document so it's easy to access, to look at the full. So if you want to go into that in more detail, but from the 18th of March, if you were to cancel the place on the program, if you were to decide that you could you could no longer come on the program for whatever reason that is, from the 18th of March until 61 days prior to the program, now you would receive a full refund minus a deposit and administration fee. Just so we're clear, the deposit is £500, the administration fee is £150. Those are in there because FZY from the 18th of March, needs to make its certain financial commitments with Allow and with some of our suppliers. So that's why these terms and conditions and cancellation dates are set as they are. And as we get closer to the summer itself, from 31 to 60 days, that's 50% you got a 50% refund minus the deposit and an admin fee. That, if you're canceling 15 to 30 days, that goes down to 20%. And if you're canceling in the last 2 weeks, there is no refund. There is no refund to be made. As you should be aware from the last information even that we had, that if you're making a cancellation for a reason whereby the participant has broken their leg or a reason, something along those lines, we have a travel insurance policy which should cover most of those legitimate reasons for cancelling. If you're cancelling because you no longer feel happy to send your participant to Israel, that won't be covered within the travel insurance policy. Should FZY should FZY needs to cancel the program for safety and security reasons, as advised by the Cheder Matzav or the Home Front Command, or the other places that we are receiving our security advice from, then we will provide you with a full refund minus any third-party costs that we cannot recover, and the contracts that we have in place with our suppliers is that we're more than likely will be able to receive most of the money back. That obviously depends on several factors but we will be working hard to try and safeguard your money, and we already are doing that, and we will continue to do that should that situation arise. Okay, so I want to address just a few questions which maybe I never covered specifically within in this like brief presentation over the last 10-15 minutes, which I know was sent in advance. And once we've done that, I'll turn over to Josh to see if what other questions maybe have come in over the course of this presentation. So one was like a question we've had is like, has Israel tour previously happened against FCDO guidance? The answer is, when I saw that question today, I looked into it and I couldn't find an answer. It's not very clear when there's not a very clear history of FCDO guidance as to when they do countermeasures and not like on that. So the answer is I don't know. It's not. I'm not trying to not answer the question, but I'm not entirely sure. What I can say is that Israel tour has happened during the Second Intifada. It's happened during the war and Protective Edge in 2014. It's happened at several times where there has been a raised heightened risk of there's been heightened security risks in Israel. It has run during those times. I'm not entirely sure what FCDO guidance were on each of those occasions, but as we said previously in the previous presentation, we take our security guidance from the Cheder Matzav and the Home Front Command, and not specifically from the FCDO guidance. And as you hopefully have been able to see a little bit through this presentation, like areas that the Home Front Command and the Cheder Matzav deem are safe to be visiting are places where there aren't rockets and there aren't sirens going off, and hardly at all, if at all, over the last several months. So I don't entirely know why the FCDO guidance is as it is. It is guidance, it's not law. But we follow the security guidance of the security services in Israel, not the UK foreign government. Does FZY have a backup should Israel tour not be able to run? The answer to that is both yes and no. As I said at the start of this presentation, FZY is only offering an Israel tour program. We're a Zionist youth movement. We believe strongly that Israel is the place that participants should be coming, as long as it's safe for them to do so, and as long as we can run a fun and meaningful program, which we believe we can do. Should the situation change, yes, we do have connections with tour operators, and we have regularly run programs in Europe and in other places in the world. In fact, right now, as we speak, our gap year participants who have been in Israel since the beginning of September and all the way through October 7th, and they're actually in a week-long program in Poland at the moment in Europe. So like we have lots of experience running programs outside of Israel, and we have lots of connections there. The question will be like, if that situation arises, and we hope that it will not, but should that situation arise, it will depend on when it arises, how close to the summer that is, etc. Like, so yes, we do have backup plans. Whether we'll be able to enact them will depend on a variety of different things. We had a question about group sizes, like the minimum and maximum number of people on a bus, and how that may vary if there may be some new people coming in or going out due to the situation, which may be slightly more than in a normal year. What I can say is that our absolute maximum we ever put on a bus is 42 people. That's the absolute maximum we ever put on a bus. We try not to have 42. We try to take a few less than that. Right now we are currently, if we're it looks like we will probably take a few less than that on a bus, but it really depends. Right now, like I would say that a bus is likely to be anywhere between 35 and 42 participants on a bus. That's the most likely scenario that we're looking at the moment. There was a question about Israeli madrachim and how are they selected, how are they found, how are they chosen. The whole process is done with our partner in Israel, Tzlalim, who work on all of the logistics on the ground. And they are, as I mentioned before, there are two Israeli madrichim, two Israeli staff that they hire for each group. Um, One of them is a tour guide. They need to have a specific qualification where they've, had for many months, if not even a couple of years, have gone through a very intensive course, learning how to guide people around Israel, both educationally but also safely. Safety both in terms of a situation as in when there's heightened security, like potentially there is a little bit more at the moment, but also safely is like when you're on a hike, what to look out for, how to make sure that people will remain safe throughout the hike. So that's one of the staff people, and this is normally their job, this is their living, this is something that they do. Um, they are, most of them are full-time tour guides and have been doing that normally for a few years. The other Israeli madrich, the other Israeli leader, is normally someone who is in university. And in Israel, most people in university go to university later than British people do because they finish school. They then most of them go to the army for 2, 3, 4 years. And only then do they go into university. So most of the Israeli staff are often in their mid 20s. Um, and yeah, they're students who have a background in youth movements and leadership and running camps, but often most of our Israeli leaders have been in Israeli delegations, which have gone to Britain, America, other places around the world, so to get to know the Jewish community and been to some of their camps and leadership roles as well. So that's how they're selected by our partner Telalim in Israel, and they're all trained along with the British Mudjahim. They have several days, in fact, I'd say in a couple of weeks worth of residential training, overnight training, plus many extra hours of other preparation and training that we do for them. There was a question which came in about communication with parents about will there be daily communication? Will that be coming in, including their location and the itinerary? The answer to that is absolutely. We do that every year. Normally, coming towards like sometime after Pesach, when we come to like normally around 6 weeks or so, 2 months out from Israel tour, that's when you'll receive a full itinerary of what the group will be doing. Um, and that's obviously any schedule received is always subject to change. It is in any year, and especially this year, it will be. But we will every single day, or 6 days a week, from Sunday to Friday, we'll be sending a daily email update, which will provide exactly the schedule of what the group will be doing, where they've been going, and information about how they're getting on, and the places that they're visiting. So you will get that daily, and there will also be ways for you to communicate with us 24/7 throughout the summer. There was a question which came in about groups. Will everyone be leaving and coming back on the same date? The answer to that is no. We have too many people going out, too many groups going out for everyone to be on the same flight and to going at the same time. There are 3 departure dates and 3 return dates. Which are, if I remember correctly, at the top of my head, is it? I want to say, Josh, you may be jumping if I'm wrong here. Is it the 8th, 9th, and 10th of July to the 30th, 31st of July or 1st of August? So that each group will be the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I'm right. So yeah, so it's each of those groups will be having 22 days in Israel, either departing 8th, 9th, or 10th of July and coming back on the 30th, 31st of July or 1st of August. We will, and as I mentioned before, we have to assign everyone to a group and to an El Al flight at some point within the next few weeks. So you will know very shortly the departure date and return date for your child. There was a question which came in about I think we mentioned in the last the last presentation there was a risk assessment that was done by the UJ Israel Experience, one of our partners in the program, and whether we could share it. So I've been in contact with them. So the risk assessment was it was a technical risk assessment as to a launching of the program to make sure that we could, in terms of things like insurance, in terms of things to ensure that, like, should a situation arise, we'd be able to charter a plane, and those types of things. So actually, that risk assessment specifically is not entirely relevant to today because that's we have passed the launch. There will be towards the summer, before the program goes out, risk assessments, and they will be shared. All of our risk assessments for our program will be shared on our website, and we're happy to email that around as well. So that specific risk assessment, which was mentioned at the last one, was an internal document from our partner organization. So that we cannot share, but we will be sharing a risk assessment nearer the time, on the actual the program itself as it goes ahead. And there was also a question about when do applications close. So actually, officially, they closed 2 weeks ago. Officially, the applications closed on the 1st of March. I can say since the 1st of March, I think we've had 15 new applications which have come in. We are, as I said, we have to make certain decisions with allow, in the coming days, couple of weeks. We want to ensure that everyone who wants to have an experience in Israel this summer can have that. There are some challenges with that if people want to apply late, but if there are people who are on this call who haven't yet applied and would like to apply, you can absolutely start that process. You can be in contact with Josh or someone else from the FZY office, and we'll happily facilitate that. We can't make any guarantees, the later this process goes on, whether there'll be any spaces left, because we will have to release the vast majority of flights which are not, got a participant assigned to it in the next couple of weeks. So, and also if people are applying later, like groups will already be formed at that point. So even if we can potentially provide a spot, the actual group that they'll be assigned to, the tour group, the bus that they'll be assigned to, like there may not be flexibility in that. So if there are people that haven't applied yet, and are looking to do so, or there's people that did apply, have withdrawn and would like to reapply again, you can, even though the official deadline has passed, but please do so quickly, and we can't make any 100% guarantees on anything on that, but the sooner you were to go through that process, the more likely we will be able to fulfill those requests. So that's what I'm gonna stop sharing this screen for. That's where the presentation ends from everything in advance, and I'm gonna turn to Josh to see if there were any questions which came in that people would like to know that we didn't cover.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple concerns about terrorist attacks. I not because you didn't mention it in this presentation, not about rocket fire necessarily, just like terrorist attacks. Someone asked if you have anything to say about attack. Someone mentioned if you have anything to say about like stabbings or terrorist attacks, and then someone also asked if they think that they'll be like looking out to target like kids coming over for tours when we go on Israel tour.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't put it in there, and I probably should have done. Things haven't changed. The vast, like they're again, like the same way that I mentioned before, that there are, unfortunately, there's rarely a week that has gone by in the last 2 decades where there haven't been rockets. Unfortunately, there is, in Israel there are times when there are terrorist attacks, stabbings, car rammings, these types of things which do happen from time to time. The vast majority of these things happen inside the West Bank or in East Jerusalem and places that we're not visiting on Israel tour. I'm not that's not 100% exclusive, but the vast majority of those are the case. And in terms of I think last time I showed a slide of kind of like the fatal terror attacks which have happened inside Israel, not including the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, and the areas that we wouldn't be visiting. The actual kind of, like, my understanding is the actual the percentages of the number of those that have been has not risen, like in this last 5-6 weeks. I think there's been one. If my understanding is correct, at Re'em Junction, about 4 weeks ago, there was one fatal terror attack, which happened inside the boundaries of Israel. But it's not a place that we visit on Israel tour. It didn't occur in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, any of these places that we visit. But there has been one since we last spoke. But in terms of like the not the ratio, it's not the right word, but in terms of the number of them, that hasn't changed since the last time we met. Do I think that they'll be targeting, like, if there are people who, who are looking to commit some kind of like act of terror, would they be looking to target groups? I mean, I don't think our groups would be any more of a target than anyone else in Israel. What I would say actually on this is right now, like we've just run not so long ago, just a few weeks ago, we were running a trip into Europe, into Spain. Um, According to the same security the security services and advisors that we use for Israel Tour, or the equivalent ones in Europe that service the Jewish community in Europe, um, their recommendation is that you need more security guards right now for a Jewish group in Europe than you do for an Israel Tour group. That's what their recommendations are. I don't think that there's I don't believe that our groups would be any specific target at all. Any more than any other member of the public. And I believe that like Israel is no more unsafe for a Jewish group than it would be for a Jewish group to be spending a few weeks in across anywhere in Europe. I think that on the whole there are always isolated incidents, but generally speaking, it is safe across Israel outside of the areas that we're not going to. The same way that it is generally safe in different places around Europe, as long as we're taking the right precautions and we're going to the right places and following the right security advice.
Someone asked that if there's a war in the north, when they are there. So actually, I'll probably say to cover this also, if there's a war that breaks out in the north up until we go on tour, what will happen? And then if there's a war in the north when they're there and insurance doesn't cover repatriation, what will you do to get the kids out and back to the UK?
Okay, so I think like it all depends on the situation at the time. It also depends on how we define war and what that means. I mean, a lot of people may say that there's already a war going on with the north, that there are rockets being fired in from Hezbollah on the northern border, and on a daily basis, and that Israel are striking and retaliating as well on a daily basis. Like, should that kind of like expand? Should that be larger? Should that be more rockets coming over? Should like Israel decide to send ground troops in? Whatever that may be, like we would need to like see what the security services are saying at that time. What I can say is, like safety and security always comes first. That is absolutely the bottom line. Like it may mean that the program could still go ahead, but we would not go to the north at all, and we'd just be based in the center of the south. It may be that that we wouldn't be able to run the program at all because because there are not enough safe places for us to run a meaningful program in Israel, and so therefore we would not run the program, or we would curtail the program. And depending on when this happened, if we were able to offer an alternative in Europe at that point, then we would absolutely do that. In terms of being able to get participants out of the country, if a situation like arose like that, we've never had a problem being able to do that. Firstly, Allow is unlikely to cancel flights. Allow is where we have the partnership with on this. And some of our partners within the Israel Tour program are the Jewish Agency, and the Jewish Agency have previously, and I can't make any guarantees on what may or may not happen in the future, depending on a variety of different things, factors which may happen or whatever. But when there have been some like significant security challenges in the past, like the Jewish Agency or the UJA or other organizations who we are partners with here, like we have chartered airplanes if when there's been need to. So like we have like a crisis management procedure that we would follow in these situations. We work very closely with the Jewish Agency, with the UJ on these things. I think it's I if the situation was to arise, we would have the means to be able to deal with that to get participants out should that be the need. Um, Most likely is that firstly, like even if this was to happen, the most likely does not mean that all of a sudden all of Israel is under attack. That there's probably large swathes of Israel which won't probably see any rise in rocket attacks. So the first thing would be to make sure that any participant was in a place in the country where they are safe. And then should parents want to, or should we feel it's the right thing to get participants home, then we'd work with Allow, we'd work with UJA, we'd work with the Jewish Agency, we work with the Israeli government, and we would do that.
So someone asks if everyone who applies gets a place.
Um, yeah, I mean, as things stand today, we're not sold out of the Israel tour program. Like when we originally booked flights for this summer, it was before October 7th, and so we recognize there's less people have are feel comfortable to visit Israel at the moment than potentially we had thought would have wanted to like pre October 7th. So we have more than enough space on the flights as things stand today. So we won't be rejecting anyone on on being full for the program. Certainly not at this point. Once we get to the point, which is why our March 18th deadline is there, once we get to the point where we have to make certain commitments to Allow and we have to release any flights that we're not using, then if people apply late, then potentially we would not be able to accept people if we don't have a space for them. We would always look to see if we can provide a space, but there's no guarantees we would. The only other, obviously there's an application process. Like we need to ensure that everyone, like physically with their mental health, their welfare, like they're fit to go. Like we're an inclusive youth movement, and we will look to provide and make changes to the program and everything that we can reasonably to make sure that anyone can go on the program. But obviously, if there's someone who is suffering like severe physical, mental health challenges at the moment, that that could lead to of someone not going. But generally speaking, that's a very rare situation. So yeah.
Have FZY or UJA been in touch with the FCDO and informed them that that tour is going to Israel? If so, what has been their response?
So we have been in touch with the foreign office, and like they're that like and it's also very clear if we go onto the FCDO website as well. Like it said that they're very clear that what they say is guidance. It's not law. And so they will neither they nor insurance companies nor many other like institutions or organizations will make very clear statements as to like what is essential travel, what's essential travel, what's non-essential travel, and and the question always gets turned back to you. So like, what do you think? Would you think this is essential travel and things like that? So it's like there's no yes, we have been in contact. They're very clear. These are areas of guidance. This is not law. This is not a dictate from the UK government at all. It's also very clear from the conversations that we've had within staff within the UK embassy in Israel. They're like, if should a situation arise that the situation was to get worse in Israel, they would absolutely do everything in their powers to help protect and to repatriate any UK citizens there, even if they came to Israel with the current guidance. Like that is effectively irrelevant in terms of the way that they will be acting. It's not like they will if you came to Israel when it said only essential travel, and they they're not going to they're not going to go through a process to determine what they at that point think is essential or not. There's a UK citizen in Israel and that person needs help and support, so they will help that person regardless.
Someone said that will there be even more additional security for areas such as Jerusalem? So I'm assuming that's in addition to the security guard. And then on that, because there's another question on the security guard, someone's asked for a bit of clarification on the security guard. So wants to know you said you're planning on having a security guard. So does that mean you definitely will? And also you say you didn't say armed? So will they be present and armed?
We will be having a security guard on every bus. They will be an armed security guard. Their training is like I mean, firstly, most people in Israel go into the army and have gone through training in terms of like weapons training, etc. In order to be an armed security guard, you also need to go through other specific training. and which needs to be refreshed. I'm not sure if it's every 6 months or every year. That also needs to be refreshed. So every group will have an armed guard with them the entirety of the time. In terms of like extra security for Jerusalem, that would depend partly on like the Cheder Matzav at the time. Like there are certain areas in Jerusalem we wouldn't be going to. I already mentioned East Jerusalem. There are certain parts of the old city which are not like, we wouldn't be visiting parts of the old city which are not part of the Jewish quarter. Like there are certain precautions that we're taking place already to kind of like ensure that we're not taking the participants to anywhere where there's, heightened security. And obviously, if there are specific days, for example, during the program, like right now, there's Ramadan, which is going on, obviously, not just in Israel but across the world. And often, like on Ramadan, especially on Fridays, there can be increased tension. There's more likely to be violence around the Temple Mount at that time. And so like if we're not, the group's not going to be there in Ramadan, but like if there are similar types of days where maybe there's an anniversary of I don't know, of Israel killing a terrorist or whatever that may be, if there's a significant date which is in there, which the Cheder Matzav see as a potential, heightened security risk, then we would either be told we can't go there at all, or we were told that we would need to go there with extra security provisions. So yeah, there will always be an armed security guard with the group, and we will follow the advice of the Cheder Matzav on specific areas.
And then the last question that I can see here is someone asked, when will the kids find out who's in their group and what dates will they be traveling? Oh, so like not what dates, like asking when they'll find out what dates they'll be
Yeah.
traveling.
Yeah, so I mean, they find both of those out at the same time. We like it should be before Pesach. It should be in around a month from now. Like we can't start, as I said, we can't start that process until we have all of the Form 2s in. We know that we have a large number of them. We're obviously waiting for the last few to be coming through over the next few days. Um, so we can't start that process until then, and that process generally can take a week, and sometimes that may mean us having to reach out to some specific families here and there if there are some clarifying questions that we need to know before we can make that decision. So we won't have internally have been able to split up all the groups probably until the end of March, first couple of days of April. Our our hope is to be able to get those to you as soon as possible after that. So I would say probably in the first couple of weeks in April before Pesach, you will find out the tour group and what date they're leaving, what flight they're on. That's when you'll find out. So so it should be, I'd say 2 to 4 weeks from now.
I can't see any more questions. So yeah, no, not one hasn't come in for a while, so I think that
Okay.
might be it.
Okay, amazing. So what I would say just as like a closing message, like firstly, like
Oh,
we are
got
here.
one, got one, got one.
Okay. Yeah.
Someone asked, based on the sign-ups so far, what is the ratio of girls to boys?
It's almost 50-50. I mean, it's very, very evenly split. Very evenly split. Um, so yes, what I would say, just so I want to be able to obviously close this so people can get on with the rest of their evenings. And what I would say is with this, like number one, like if you have questions, Josh is in the FZY office. There's a whole team of other people in the FZY office who'll be more than happy to answer your questions. To feel free to phone the office, email the office. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. There is both on the FZY website. There's a lot of documents which talks about cancellation policies. We've got frequently asked questions there. We've got our terms and conditions. We've got like everything there, and we try to break them up into like smaller documents so they'll be easier for you to see and to manage. And also, like, do please go back onto our YouTube on our YouTube channel to see the last one of these presentations we did, where we went into more detail about the security arrangements, about the insurance, about like some of the medical things as well. Thank you all for being a part of this process with us. Like, really do appreciate that. And I hope that we will be continuing the journey with you. With your excited to meet your children over the coming months, and yeah, and have a great summer together. So, wishing you all a great rest of the day.
Thank you.